Hello, this is channel Easy Self-Host. In this video, we are going to run Authentik, the all-in-one authentication server that can act as the single sign-on for our self-hosted applications. Authentik supports multiple authentication methods such as Forward Auth, OAuth, LDAP, and many more. In this video, I'll show you the most commonly used methods in self-hosted applications, Forward Auth and OAuth. Forward Auth is a straightforward concept. In this method, our proxy servers, such as Nginx or Caddy, work with Authentik to secure requests to the applications. Before we sign in, the proxy server directs us to the Authentik site. After signing in, the proxy server forwards the request directly to the applications, embedding details like usernames in the HTTP header. The applications can rely on these headers to identify our account. This method can also safeguard applications that lack native sign-in capabilities. OAuth is an open standard for access delegation, commonly used to allow one application to access information in another one. It is often used for logging with X features. Authentik can serve as an OAuth provider, allowing other self-hosted applications to offer a login with Authentik option. In this setup, the applications request your permission to access your profile on the Authentik app by having you sign in and authorize the access. Following this, Authentik redirects you back to the application with the code to access your profile, enabling the application to sign in your account. Now let's begin setting up the Authentik app itself. Here is the Docker Compose file for the Authentik. First, we declare the ProxyNet Docker network, which we will use to connect our proxy server and the Authentik service. Next, we define a list of Docker volumes to persist data from Authentik, such as database data, media files, and certificates. We will see how these are mounted in the service section. In the services section, we have 4 services: the PostgreSQL database, the Redis cache server, the Authentik web server, and a worker service for background tasks. For the Postgres database, we use the official Postgres image. For volumes, we mount the database volume to the data path of Postgres to persist the DB data. In the environment section, we first configure the Postgres password. The password is set through the .env file, allowing us to share the value with the Authentik services. Then we set the username and the DB name to Authentik. In the Redis service, we also use the official image. We can mount the Redis volume to persist its states between restarts. Next is the Authentik server. We use the official image published by the Authentik team with the version specified. For applications like this, it's good practice to specify the version to avoid unintentional upgrades, as breaking changes could impact many other applications. Here we have a command to start the server instead of the worker. In the environment section, we configure the Redis and Postgres hosts, with host names matching the service names in this Docker Compose file. The next 3 environments configure the Postgres user, database name, and password. Note that the password is referring to the same variable in the .env file as the Postgres service. We also have an environment to set the secret key, which is specified in the .env file. In the network section, we assign 2 networks to this container. The ProxyNet network connects this service to the proxy server, while the default network connects it to the other services in the Docker Compose. In the expose section, we document the port 9000 to the web server. For the volumes, we mount 2 volumes to persist media files and templates. Finally, we specify that server depends on Postgres and Redis so that it will start after node services. The worker service uses the same image as the server, but with a different command. The rest of the configuration is similar to the server, except that the worker doesn't need to attach to the proxy network. And the worker mounts an additional source volume for persisting certificates. We also need to update our proxy server configuration to assign a domain name for Authentik. I'm using Caddy, so I'll create a Caddy rule to proxy the domain authentik.home.easyselfhost.com to the Authentik server service at port 9000. Now let's move to our server command line to deploy this Docker Compose. Navigate to the directory containing the Docker Compose file and execute the command docker compose app-d. Additionally, we need to refresh the proxy configuration. I'll restart my Caddy server to apply the changes. After this, Authentik will be up and running. To set up the admin user, navigate to the URL starting with your server domain and then add path/if/flow/initial setup. Here we can set up the email and password of the admin user. Then we are on the Authentik webpage. Let's go to the admin interface to start our configuration. In this video, we'll focus on creating logins for our self-hosted apps. The first thing we need to do is to create users. Let's navigate to the directory section and enter the user setting. Here we can create a new non-admin user by assigning a username and entering an email address. We have the option to configure the mail server to send a sign-up email. Alternatively, we can directly assign a password for this user by selecting the user, scrolling down, and clicking Set Password. After we have a user, we can start integrating with apps. Let's start with a simple utility app that lacks any sign-in mechanism, Stirling PDF. Our goal is to secure this app so that it requires logging in, and we'll use Forward Auth to achieve this. In the Authentik admin interface, go to the Application section and click Create with Wizard. Let's name the application Stirling PDF. And in the UI setting, specify its launch URL, pdf.home.easyselfhost.com. In the next step, we need to choose the provider type. Here, select Forward Auth Single Application and click Next. For the authentication flow and authorization flow, choose the default options. The external host is the URL of our application. Then let's click Submit. There's one more step on the Authentik panel. Let's go to the Outpost tab, click the embedded outpost, select the Stirling PDF, and click Update. This action will activate our application settings. Forward Auth requires support from proxy server, so we need to update our proxy configuration. Here, I'll show you how to do this in Caddy. Other proxies like Nginx or Traffic also support Forward Auth, and you can find configuration guides on the Authentik website. In the Caddy file, I added a snippet for using Forward Auth with Authentik. This snippet can be reused for each app that we want to secure with Authentik. It does two things. First, it proxies a path /outpost.goauthentic.io from the app domain to the Authentik server. Then it includes a Forward Auth directive that targets the Authentik server. This directive specifies the URI for authentication, sets headers as defined by Authentik, and identifies the trusted proxy to only allow private IPs. For the Stirling PDF's proxy rule, we simply need to add import Authentik before the reverse proxy directive. Now let's go to our server command line and refresh our proxy configuration. After updating our proxy configuration, we can open the browser and navigate to the domain for Stirling PDF. You will see that it redirects us to the Authentik site, prompting us to log in to Stirling PDF. Once logged in, we are back in the Stirling PDF app just like before. Now let's integrate with an app that supports both native logins and Forward Auth. Paperless-ngx is one such app. If you are interested, you can check out my video about Paperless-ngx. According to its documentation, it has an environment configuration to enable Forward Auth, and it recognizes users through the remote user HTTP header. So let's add this environment variable in the Docker Compose file for Paperless-ngx. In the proxy configuration, we can reuse our existing snippet by simply adding import Authentik in the paperless Caddy rule. However, there's an additional step. We need to populate the remote user HTTP header. Authentik defaults to using the Authentik username header for usernames. For paperless, we need to copy the username from the Authentik username header to the remote user header. Next, let's head to the server command line and restart both Caddy and Paperless-ngx to apply the new configurations. We're not finished yet. We still need to add another application in the Authentik admin portal. We can follow the same steps we used for Stirling PDF to configure this application. Also, ensure this application is enabled in the Outpost. Then if we navigate to the Paperless-ngx URL, you will be redirected to the Authentik site. Since we've already logged into Authentik from using Stirling PDF, there's no need to re-enter our password. Click Continue and we can access the Paperless app. As I use the same username as the one I set up with the native Paperless login, I'm actually logging into that same account. You can see all my files that I uploaded in my Paperless video. That wraps up how to use Forward Auth with Authentik. Now let's explore some examples of OAuth. In my previous video, we looked at a Notion alternative called Outline, which requires an identity provider. At that time, we used an external provider, Slack, which isn't ideal. Now that we have Authentik set up, we can use it as our identity provider for Outline. According to the Outline documentation, we need several OIDC parameters to enable a customized OAuth provider. Back in the Authentik admin panel, let's create a new application for Outline. The first step is similar to previous ones. We just fill in the name and the URL of our application. For the provider type, select OAuth2/OIDC and click Next. In the provider configuration, we'll use the default authentication flow and authorization flow. You will notice that we are automatically assigning an OAuth client ID and client secret. We will use this later to configure Outline. Optionally, we can add a regular expression to restrict the valid application URL for enhanced security. After the application is created, go to the Providers page under Applications. First, click the Edit button of our Outline provider, where you can see the client ID and the client secret. Let's fill in these parameters into Outline's env file. For the remaining parameters, exit the Edit mode and click on the Outline provider. Here we can find the auth URI, token URI, user info URI, and logout URI. After setting these parameters, restart the Outline Docker Compose. Then in the browser, navigate to the Outline URL and you will be redirected to the Authentik site. Once you authorize the Outline app, you will be redirected back to the Outline app. Here you can see that your user profile matches what we configure in Authentik. Now let's explore another example of OAuth integration that doesn't require any changes to the configuration. The app is Immich, the photo backup and management app that I talked about in a previous video. In the administration panel of Immich, there is an OAuth application setting. If we enable it, we will need a few parameters. Let's head back to the Authentik site and create an OAuth application for Immich. We can follow the same steps as with the Outline example. Immich requires just 3 parameters, the client ID, the client secret, and the issuer URL. We can find the client ID and the client secret in the edit mode of the provider. And in the overview of the provider, we can find the issuer URL. Once these settings are saved, if we log out and revisit the Immich URL, we will see the Login with OAuth option below the native sign-in UI. Clicking this button will redirect us to the Authentik to sign in. That covers the authentication examples I wanted to show you, but Authentik has many more capabilities. I'll demonstrate a few of them. First, we can enhance the security of our apps with multi-factor authentication. Let's go directly to the Authentik site. Then go to the Settings and to the MFA Devices section. There are several options available, like TOTP for verifying a temporary code for login. You can use the apps mentioned on this site to scan the QR code to set up. I prefer using the passkey on my phone, so I choose the WebAuthn device. Chrome will display a QR code, and we can scan with our phone to enable it to use the passkey for this website. After this setup, if we try to log in again, we will need to use the passkey after entering our username and the password. We can also make some aesthetic changes to the Authentik user interface. For instance, we can customize the icons of our applications. In the application settings, let's upload icons for our apps. Once configured, these icons will appear when we access the Authentik site, and we can use this as a launcher for our self-hosted apps. That's all for this video. You can visit the Authentik documentation for more use cases. Please consider subscribing for content like this. You can find the configuration files in this video on GitHub and the link is in description below. Thank you for watching.